The night felt like a paused breath, the kind that makes every small sound ring louder than it should. My mirror was fogged, the faucet ticking, and somewhere in the hall a neighbor's TV murmured like a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. My name is Maya Collins. I'm 33, and I manage budgets for people who think numbers are a foreign language. At 11:51 p.m., my phone lit up in the corner of the sink, bright as a flare. We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings. It was from my mother. No greeting, no soft landing, just a verdict. A second later, my sister, Lana, tapped a heart on the message as if she were liking a photo of a beach. I stood very still. Not because I was shocked, I was past shock, but because some messages deserve stillness. The way surgeons give a beat of silence before the first cut. The minty bite of toothpaste lingered on my tongue. I rinsed my mouth and let the glass clink on the porcelain. Then I wiped a circle in the mirror and watched my face sharpen through the steam. Thanks for confirming, I typed. I'll cancel all the autopays. Send. The group chat went flat, a dead lake, no bubbles, no dots, just the blue banner of my own words floating there, simple and clean. I set the phone face down on the counter like it might overheat if I kept looking. The apartment was quiet. Evan, my boyfriend, had fallen asleep on the couch with a book open on his chest, one arm laid across his eyes like a man who trusts the ceiling to stay in place while he sleeps. He breathes softly when he's out. Not a snore, not even a whistle. Just proof that peace can be ordinary. I walked to the window and cracked it an inch. Cold air pushed in, city air, metallic, faintly damp, the kind that carries the after-midnight hush of elevators and distant buses. I thought about how many little wires tied my life to theirs, the electric, the water, the Wi-Fi, the phone plan, the gas card, the insurance. All of it under my name because for years it was easier to be the one who solves the problem than the one who says no. The phone buzzed again, a small rattle on ceramic. I didn't pick it up. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I want to know who's here with me in this moment, because the next step I'm taking needs witnesses. I let the phone buzz where it lay and crossed the dark apartment. The only light was a blue square on the coffee table from Evan's e-reader. He didn't stir when I lifted the laptop from under it. The lid rose, and the screen came up like a curtain on a stage I knew by heart. Passwords were muscle memory, the kind that lives in your fingers long after you forget why you learned it. Utility portal first, electric. The dashboard showed my parents' address in neat gray type, due date pulsing yellow. I clicked through settings until I reached the toggle, off. A confirmation box asked if I was sure. I read every word. I clicked yes. The page blinked and replaced the amount due with a notice about account owner action required. Water, off. Gas, off. City Wi-Fi bundle, off. The phone plan took longer. I had merged lines years ago when theirs kept lurching into suspension. There was a quiet satisfaction in stripping it down now, removing add-ons, releasing numbers, setting the final day of service. The site warned me about interruptions to connected devices. The word interruptions felt accurate. I confirmed. Insurance next, car, and home. I didn't cancel their policy. I separated my profile from theirs, then terminated the rider that hid their lapses under my credit. A small, tidy message popped into the corner. Changes may affect premium. That was the point. The gas card was the easiest. Disable account. Are you sure? Yes. The button grayed out, like the end of a traffic light cycle. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed, and the radiator clicked as if the apartment were nodding along. I opened the window another inch and sat at the table with the laptop centered like a ledger book. A blank spreadsheet waited, cells stretching out in obedient lines. Title, Family Ledger. I built it the way I do for clients who swear they hate numbers until those numbers tell them the truth. Columns: date, payee, amount, reason, evidence. I added one more: notes, for the small necessities that get erased when you tell the story out loud. January 14th, County Treasurer, $3,000. Property tax installment, bank confirmation. February 28th, Water and Sewer, $186.42. Past due to avoid shutoff. Screenshot, email from mom. Please hurry. March 3rd, Electric, $241.11. Balance plus reconnection. Receipt. March 10th, Auto Insurance, $1,122.67. Policy reinstatement after lapse. PDF policy binder. March 18th, Tuition, Westfield College, $6,800. Half semester for Lana, ACH transfer ID. April 1st, Wi-Fi phone, 209.54. Family plan bundle, statement. April 15th, grocery run, $172.09. Will pay you back Friday. Text thread. The rows built a rhythm. I moved month to month, year to year. I stopped guessing and started reading. Bank exports, email receipts, old PDFs I'd saved at 2 a.m. because a quiet voice in me insisted that someday I would need them. I imported statements, filtered by their street name, tagged transfers with the reasons I'd pretended didn't matter. The total in the corner walked up in clean, even steps. 10,000, 25, 49, 73. I paused only to pull supporting files into a folder named the same as the sheet. Subfolders for utilities, insurance, tuition, groceries, repairs, miscellaneous. I renamed screenshots with dates so they wouldn't vanish into IMG purgatory. Evan turned once on the couch, the book sliding to the rug. He exhaled and settled again. I added the car maintenance I'd covered after Dad called from the shoulder of the interstate. I added the property tax catch-up the week I split my rent into 2 envelopes because they can't lose the house, sweetheart. I added the small, silly things that prove a pattern more clearly than a single large check. Streaming logins, a rideshare top-up, the pharmacy pickup I paid over the phone. A number appeared in the bottom cell that made the room go very quiet. $134,000. I stared at it until my eyes stung, not from grief, but from clarity. I clicked save. Then I printed a clean summary page, the totals stacked in dry black ink. Outside, a bus sighed and pulled away from the curb. Inside, I copied the sheet to a second tab labeled Backup and set a password on the file, then saved it again to an external drive. The window breathed cool air against my wrists. I closed the folder tree and let the desktop go still. The phone on the bathroom counter buzzed once and stopped. I didn't move. The ledger was built. The switches were off. The next step would require different tools. I carried the laptop back to the kitchen table and opened a new email. The subject line came first, plain and spare so no one could mistake it for family talk. Final notice. Outstanding balances. I placed the spreadsheet beside me, lined up the receipts in a neat stack, and let the words find their own calm. To my mother's address, my father's, and the family group thread. CC Julia Ang. I began like I would with a client memo. Dates, facts, totals. No adjectives, no apologies. I listed each category in bold, each line item with its support. Tuition, Lana Collins, transfers on file, per attached ledger, $6,800, final half semester, plus prior payments detailed in tab, tuition, property taxes, county treasurer, payments to prevent delinquency and auction, totals in tab, taxes, confirmations attached, utilities, electric, water, sewer, gas, reconnections and ongoing coverage under my name, receipts attached, service IDs listed, insurance, auto home, Reinstatement after lapse and rider coverage under my credit. Policy binders attached. Effective dates noted. Communications. Wi-Fi phone plan. Bundled services for the family line. Monthly statements attached. Groceries and incidentals. Emergency items and requested runs. Scanned receipts and text confirmations attached. Repairs, maintenance. Invoices and proof of payment included. At the center of the page, I placed the total in a separate line so it could not hide. Total outstanding, $134,000. I read it twice, then added the sentence that would hold the entire structure upright. This is not a request. You have 30 days to initiate a documented repayment plan before I proceed with legal action. All communications, from this point forward, must be in writing. I attached the ledger summary, the support folders compressed into a single archive, and a one-page cover detailing where to direct payment and where to send written correspondence. I signed with my full name and address. Then I dated the letter in the header as if it belonged in a file drawer, which it did. My finger hovered only long enough to check the addresses again. I pressed send. The cursor spun and the message slipped away. A sent copy landed in my outbox with the tidy stamp of the hour and minute. 30 seconds later, Julia's reply flicked across the screen, short, like she'd been waiting with her hand on the door. Send it. I'll take it from here. She added instructions in a second line. Forward any responses. Do not engage by phone. Preserve all messages. I forwarded the entire thread to a new folder called Legal and exported a PDF of the notice into a cloud drive I keep for contracts and tax filings. Then I printed a hard copy and slid it into a plain envelope marked with the date. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the paper feed through the rollers, footsteps, soft against the hall. Evan appeared in the doorway, hair crooked from sleep, collar turned in. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. "I am," I said, and I meant it. He nodded and set a glass of water beside my elbow, the quiet kind of help that doesn't require explanation. "Whatever you need," he said. He didn't ask what came next. I gathered the attachments list and checked it against the folders one last time. Utilities, complete. Insurance, complete. Tuition, complete. I plugged in the external drive, saved a mirrored copy, and ejected it when the light stopped blinking. The ledger's total held steady in the corner of the screen, black and square as a mile marker. The phone, still face down on the bathroom counter, started to rattle again. One buzz, then another. I let it buzz. The email was out. The record existed. From now on, everything would be on paper. The first voicemail arrived before the printer's heat had faded from the paper. Then the next, and another after that, stacking in the notification bar until the numbers meant nothing. I left the phone where it was and poured coffee. The apartment held that thin pre-dawn quiet when even the radiators seemed polite. I took one sip and turned the phone over. 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails flagged urgent. A text from my father, the kind that tries to sound steady while standing on shaky ground. "Don't touch anything until we talk." Then another. "We can handle this within the family." I scrolled without replying. A message from my mother appeared, long and broken into choppy paragraphs, the digital version of a heaving breath. "Undo this. You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to ruin us." I set the phone down and opened the front window an inch. Somewhere below, a delivery truck hissed and a brake squealed. Evan had fallen asleep again in the bedroom, the bed creaking softly as he turned over. I brought the coffee back to the table and checked my inbox. A new notification sat there like a small alarm. "Mom tagged you in a post." I clicked. Her face filled the screen first. An old church photo cropped in tight. The caption ran long enough to require "see more." I read it all. We raised a daughter with everything we had. Some people forget who held them when they were sick, who taught them right from wrong. Money changes people. Pride comes before destruction. My name sat in the middle of it, not quite said and not quite hidden, as clear as if she'd spoken it out loud at a microphone. The comments arrived in time with my heartbeat. You poor thing. Some children. Praying for you. Then a familiar name, Aunt Gina. She does not usually write in public, and when she does, it is a single line that lands like a gavel. You mean the daughter whose bills you pushed onto her for years? The thread stalled, the easy sympathy thinned. Another relative added, they borrowed from us too, never paid. Screenshots started to appear, old texts, careful crops, captions that cut away the excuses. I didn't click like, didn't respond, didn't take a screenshot of my own. I closed the tab and let the apartment go quiet again. The voicemails kept loading. I listened to one. My sister's voice, Lana, crying so hard the words hiccuped. You can't do this to me. If I can't finish this semester, it's on you. She moved from crying to anger in the length of the message. From why would you to, I'll take you to court. I saved it to a folder called Messages and marked the time. Then I listened to my father's, a door creaking in the background, his tone edged with a patience he uses on customers and children. Let's be reasonable. No courts. Let's talk like adults. I forwarded both to the legal folder along with a note to myself, preserve originals. Then the phone rang with a number I knew but rarely saw. Grandpa Henry. I answered on the second ring. Maya, he said, his voice clear, the way water is clear when the pipe is new. I'm here, I said. He did not ask what happened. He did not share a story. Send the invoice, he said. 3 words, steady. I could hear the clink of a spoon set down on a saucer, the polite shuffle of a chair. I closed my eyes and almost smiled. I'll send it, I told him. Good, he said, and hung up. I placed the invoice PDF on a fresh email addressed only to him. No commentary, no explanation, just the document and the total. Then I sent it to myself as well, for the record. The act of attaching it steadied something in me that had been moving all night. By mid-morning, the cousins began to arrive in my inbox like quiet weather. No fanfare, just a shift in pressure. One wrote, "They did this to me after my surgery, never paid me back." Another, "I stopped answering their calls last year. I'm sorry you took it alone." I thanked them each with a single line and moved the messages into a folder named Family, Support. I did not add them to any thread, did not ask for more. The record was building itself now. A final ping from my mother's post, a comment that tried to write the script. Family forgives, family doesn't sue. I didn't answer. I opened a new note, typed a sentence to remind my future self what the past had looked like when it dressed up as love. Family is honest in writing. The apartment clock ticked toward noon. Outside, the street woke fully, trucks backing, horns soft at corners. I shut the window and gathered the printed notice, the ledger summary, the mailing envelope for hard copies. The phone buzzed once more and went still. The chorus had raised its curtain and found itself without a lead. I put the envelope by the door and washed my cup. The water ran clear. The next call I expected would not come from family. The call came just after lunch. A New York number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, then answered on the third ring. "Ms. Collins?" a woman asked, her voice crisp, professional. "This is Amy Patel from Patterson & Lowe, a probate office in Manhattan. We're handling the estate of your late grandmother, Eleanor Collins." I stood by the window, pen in hand, without remembering why I'd picked it up. "I'm here," I said. "We're finalizing beneficiary records for a small trust your grandmother set up," she continued. "Originally $40,000, split between 2 beneficiaries, Maya Collins and Lana Collins." She paused and paper rustled softly. "I'm calling because your file shows an alteration. Your name was crossed out and replaced. The signature on the amendment doesn't match your confirmed signatures from prior documents." I pressed the pen to a sticky note and wrote 3 words. Trust, 40,000. My voice came out level. When was the change made? 4 years ago, she said. We're required to notify you before any disbursement. If you'd like to dispute the change, I can send a verification packet and connect you with counsel at our office. 4 years ago, I didn't need a calendar. That was the summer my mother posted a photo of a new kitchen, marble counters, stainless appliances, soft close drawers that made her sound like a magazine. Hard work pays off, she wrote. I could still see the vein in the stone curling like a river. Yes, I said. Send everything. I confirmed my email and hung up. The room felt sharper, like a picture that had finally come into focus. I forwarded my notes to Julia with the subject line, probate call, urgent. Before I could finish attaching a screenshot of Amy's number, Julia called. Talk to me, she said, no greeting. I relayed the details, the date, the mismatch on the signature, the amount, the split. 4 years, she repeated. The same timeline as the remodel. Her voice went flat in the way that means she's already moving. Don't contact them. I'm filing for a temporary freeze. We'll add forgery and inheritance fraud to the file. Her email followed within minutes. Request for documents from the probate office, a draft of the emergency motion, instructions for preserving any posts or messages that reference the remodel. I sent Amy a short reply authorizing release to my counsel and copied Julia. Then I opened the family photo album on my phone and scrolled to the kitchen pictures, saving the originals, with timestamps, to a folder labeled Evidence Remodel. By late afternoon, Julia had confirmation from the court. Assets temporarily frozen pending review. The order looked ordinary, lines and a seal, names typed in a perfect font. It changed the room anyway. I took a breath that felt like fresh air after a long hallway. The first email arrived at 5:12 p.m. from my father. We had no idea any of this happened. Let's be reasonable. We can work this out privately. At 5:17, my mother followed. You always said you didn't want anything from Grandma. We used it for the family. She had attached a photo from the kitchen, the marble shining under puck lights, proof and confession in the same frame. I forwarded both to Julia without a comment. Her reply came back. Received. Do not respond. All communications through counsel. She added a second line. Save that kitchen photo with metadata intact. I did. Then I closed my email and sat at the table with my ledger still open in the corner of the screen. The total hadn't moved. The numbers were the same, but the story around them had shifted, like a house that looked fine from the street until you found the crack running under the paint. A final note landed from Amy, simple and neat. Verification packet sent. Pending hold placed on disbursement. Contact information for our legal department attached. I thanked her and printed the email for the hard file, sliding it in behind the asset freeze order. Evening settled in at the window. Evan came home with takeout and found me still at the table. News? He asked. More than I expected, I said. Enough to freeze the water. He set the bags down and rested a hand on my shoulder. Then let it freeze, he said. That's how cracks show. The next morning I met Julia in her office, a quiet room where the carpet muted every step and the windows made the city look organized. She had a thin folder waiting for me, clipped at the corners like a patient chart. Here, she said, sliding it across. Repayment terms. I sat and read. The first page was simple and final. Total outstanding, $134,000. Payment schedule, 12 equal monthly installments, due on the first business day of each month. Interest applied on late payments. 2 missed payments, consecutive or not, trigger immediate legal escalation and entry of judgment. All communications must be in writing, routed through counsel. No direct contact with me by either parent. A separate clause for Lana. Any contact related to tuition, bills, or repayment must go through Julia's office only. Julia watched me the way surgeons watch a monitor. "Are you sure you want this in writing?" she asked. "Once it's signed, it stops being a family conversation." "That's what I want," I said. "No more conversations." She nodded. "We'll attach your ledger and exhibits. I'll send it this afternoon." She added 2 more pages, a termination of permissive occupancy for the house that still sat under my name, and a schedule for removal, 7 days from service, keys surrendered, property left broom clean. I felt the words pass through me like a clean line. "They'll push back," she said. "That's fine." "We won't." I initialed the margin marks and signed where she placed tabs. When we were done, she stacked the papers, squared the edges, and slipped them into a messenger envelope. "I'll have them served," she said, "and I'll email copies. Don't answer anything that isn't from this office." By late afternoon, the emails had gone out. Repayment agreement attached as PDF, letterhead steady as a heartbeat. I forwarded the copies to my legal folder and printed 1 set for the hard file. The apartment felt balanced again, as if the furniture had been nudged back to center. I made tea and stood by the window long enough to see the streetlights blink awake. The knock came just after dusk, 3 soft raps as if the hallway might overhear. I opened the door to my mother. Her hair was pulled back the way it was when I was small, and she was late for work, her mascara smudged into the skin beneath her eyes. She held a wrinkled envelope like a prop. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. "We're losing the house," she said. No greeting. "Do something for Lana." The words came out practiced, the way people repeat a phrase until they believe it makes sense. "She has exams. She can't live like this." I kept one hand on the door. "The agreement explains what happens next," I said. "We won't sign that," she said quickly. "It's too much. You can't expect—" "I'm not expecting anything," I said. "I'm documenting." Her voice dropped to a stage whisper, the kind meant to sound intimate and lands like a threat. "You'll regret this. Family remembers." I reached to the side table and picked up the paper Julia had arranged for service, a formal notice terminating their right to occupy the property. The dates were clear, the language dry and final. I handed it to her. She took it automatically, eyes flicking from the first line to my face, as if the page might change if she looked at me long enough. "You wouldn't," she said. "I already did." We stood in the doorway with the hall light turning the air a soft gold. Down the corridor, someone's dinner hissed in a pan. A television laughed in a distant living room. My mother looked small in that light, the kind of small you become when the old sentences stop working. She folded the notice once, then again, as if smaller paper meant smaller consequences. 7 days, I said. Keys to my attorney's office. Her mouth trembled, but the words didn't change. For Lana, she tried again, softer now, almost a plea. She's an adult, I said. So am I. I didn't add anything else. There wasn't anything left that belonged to speech. I stepped back just enough for the door to close. Her heels clicked once, then again, then faded down the hall. I turned the deadbolt and leaned my forehead against the cool wood for a moment, not from weakness, but to mark the line I'd just drawn. On the table, the repayment agreement lay under a paperweight, steady as a plumb line. I slid it into the file with the ledger and the freeze order, the edges aligned. Outside, the street exhaled as a bus pulled away from the curb. Inside, the apartment fell into a quiet that felt earned. The first transfer hit 3 days later, $3,800 posted to a dedicated account Julia had set up for repayments. I saw it on my phone as I stepped off the bus, a neat line of black text that made the sidewalk feel level. An email from Julia followed within minutes. Transfer received, on schedule, no commentary, no drama, just a ledger moving in the right direction. The second payment arrived the next week. I stopped bracing for the ping and started filing it instead. In my legal folder, I made a subfolder named Receipts, Repayments, and dropped each notice there with the date in the file name. The routine soothed what the arguments never could. Numbers don't shout, they simply add up. The probate case moved too. Amy sent a packet of forms I signed at my kitchen table, then scanned and returned. Julia coordinated with their legal department. No back and forth, no phone calls to soften anything. A month to the day after Amy first called, a formal notice arrived from the court. The forged change to my grandmother's trust was reversed. Funds restored to the original split, with damages to be calculated. The order sat on my screen like clean weather after a long storm. Around the same time, my mother's public chorus began to thin. The Facebook post still lived where she left it, but the comments changed color. Aunt Gina returned with a second line. "You mean the mistake where you took her inheritance?" A cousin added screenshots. Old messages asking for loans after Dad's plumbing fiasco, promises to repay that never cleared. Another relative wrote quietly, "I went no contact 2 years ago. I'm sorry it took this for the truth to breathe." I didn't answer any of them. I saved the thread with a web capture and file stamped it under evidence narrative. The house, meanwhile, moved from paper to action. Julia's process server delivered the notice. The clock started. The property manager texted me on day 6. The keys would be ready the next morning. I went by at noon with a canvas bag for paperwork and a roll of tape. The driveway was empty, the curtains gone. Inside, lemon cleaner hung in the air. On the living room wall, a pale rectangle showed where the family photo had once stared down at every holiday argument we pretended was a toast. Without the frame, the wall looked taller. I moved through the rooms the way you walk through a stranger's place on a tour, not searching, just taking inventory. In the kitchen, the marble caught the afternoon light and looked expensive but tired. I ran my fingertips along the cold edge once, then let my hand fall. It was beautiful, and it was proof. I photographed the counters with the date stamping in the corner, added them to evidence, remodel, and closed the folder on my phone. When I stepped outside, the property manager met me with a manila envelope. "Keys," he said. "Garage remote, mailbox." He held out a clipboard. I signed where he pointed, and he watched me tuck the envelope into my bag. Evan was waiting in the car with the engine off, his elbow resting on the open window. "No spare key?" he asked as I slid into the seat. "It wasn't home," I said. "It was collateral." We drove in an easy silence, city blocks turning over like pages. Back at my apartment, I sealed the keys into a second envelope and wrote Julia's office address in my cleanest handwriting, then walked it down to the mailbox. The hinge squeaked when I pulled it open, then settled with a small, definite sound when I let it close. That evening, Julia's email arrived as if she'd been sitting at the finish line. "Second repayment received. Probate reversal confirmed. Keep accounts separate. Don't engage." I replied with one word, "Acknowledged," and turned off my laptop. The apartment looked the same as it had the week before, but something in the air had changed. The story wasn't loud anymore. It was moving quietly, one document at a time, away from me. The months thinned out like pages. Transfers landed on the first business day, each one noted and filed. I stopped checking them the second they arrived. I waited until evening, opened the legal folder, dropped the notices into receipts, repayments, and closed the lid. Habit replaced adrenaline. Peace learned my schedule. Amy sent a final update from probate. The forged amendment reversed, distribution restored, damages assessed. Julia forwarded the order with a short line, "Done," and a copy stamped by the court. I printed it for the hard file and slid it behind the freeze order. The stack looked neat now, not like a barricade, more like a record you could shelve and forget. We moved apartments, Evan and I, 2 blocks closer to the river, a place with light that stayed past dinner. On moving day, I packed the last box from my office, the external drive, a stapler, a ceramic paperweight shaped like a smooth stone. The old spreadsheet was still on my screen, a map of years I didn't want to visit anymore. I saved one copy to the drive for the archive, then selected all and pressed delete. The cells went white in a blink. I closed the lid and carried the box to the door. In the new place, I set my desk by a window. The first night we ate takeout cross-legged on the floor and watched the street lamps come on in a line like a quiet parade. My phone stayed face down in the center of the room, silent. When I turned it over, there were no missed calls, no threads demanding explanations, just the weather and a reminder to water the plant we'd bought on a whim. One morning, an email from Julia waited at the top of my inbox. Case closed. All payments complete. Probate concluded. Congratulations, Maya. I read it twice, then archived the chain. Thousands of words vanished into a single gray arrow pointing down. I opened the drawer where I'd kept the hard copies, checked the labels, and shut it. No keys taped inside. No envelopes waiting for me to be softer than I meant to be. Evan leaned on the doorframe and asked, "Do you want to mark it somehow?" I thought of the marble counters, the pale rectangle on the wall where the old portrait had hung, the steady click of the mailbox shutting on the keys. "I already did," I said. "I kept records. I kept the truth." He nodded and crossed the room. "Do you miss them?" "Sometimes," I said. "Not enough to go back." That night I powered off my phone and stood at the window. Traffic moved along the river like a low, steady hum. I breathed the kind of deep breath you take when you know the ceiling will hold. Let them say I left the family. I didn't leave anything. I built something of my own.